How do you follow Musharraf's session in any setting whatsoever? Absolutely inspiring, Musharraf. Thank you so much. Reminded me of the days, early days of my career when we were launching Mindshare in Group M offices here, and she was our lead key client. We worked on some fantastic initiatives, and thank you, Musharraf. Look, good afternoon, everybody. And again, once more, thank you, Musharraf, for getting everybody really woken up after lunch, which is usually considered a graveyard slot. We've got a very interesting session lined up for you. The topic is very relevant. It's pertinent to today. It's pertinent to tomorrow. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff. Before I introduce the topic, my fellow speakers, and myself, I just want a very quick, old-fashioned show of hands. And if we can just turn down the lights that's on my face a little bit so I can see the crowd a little. So a quick question. How many of you have used one generative AI tool or the other? Just a show of hands, please. Raise of hands. ChatGPT, anything else? A lot of you. Excellent. We're speaking to a very informed set of audience. How many of you have paid for one of those tools? How many of you have got a subscription to a paid service? Fewer. So I would say about 15 to 20% of people who've used a generative AI tool have actually paid for a premium subscription. How many of you found the output of those AI tools to be useful? Amazing. So I'm looking at a roughly 60 to 70% conversion rate in conviction. Look, as Afshin said, my name is Asad Rehman. I have spent a ridiculous number of years in advertising, media, and communications. I started my career in Pakistan from J. Walter Thompson, went on to launch and run the Group M and Mindshare offices in Pakistan. I did that again in Vietnam, and then eventually joined Unilever, where in my last role I was managing their digital transformation, media, and marketing services across one of the biggest clusters, Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, and Russia. The picture you see on the screen here is actually generated by Imagine AI. And the prompt that I gave Imagine AI was, could you imagine how Karachi would look 100 years from now? And I don't know if it's, they just picked up the map and plotted a random city on top, but I can potentially see the main artery of Shara Faisal and that big tower where the old Metropole Hotel potentially used to stand, but I couldn't make head or tail out of anything else that's in the picture. And that takes me to this point about generative AI being full of discussion in today's world. So the reason I say that is everyone you speak to will either value the usefulness of generative AI or will have something completely opposite to say. It's a bit like Pakistani cricket. It completely depends on the results you got, which a lot of you have endorsed that very positive when you use the tool. But if you don't get a good result, obviously your relationship with generative AI just gets into a wrong start and you start to hate that bit of technology. There's a lot of cynicism around generative AI, around, about how it could potentially reduce the potential of human contribution in the economic ecosystem, in the corporate ecosystem, etc. My opinion, when Andrew said that, when he was literally had just launched GPT, he probably, was very early days for them. His own opinion potentially has changed a lot since then. I have a real star-studded cast for you over the next couple of hours. I mean, really, outside of me, everyone on this slide is probably well known in the Pakistani market and globally as well. The way we've structured the session is that we would have Alex Brunuri and Dan Shepard come and actually excite us a little bit about the real use cases of Gen AI and what their point of view is. For those of you who don't know these two gentlemen, Alex used to run the creative shop for Google across Middle East, North Africa, and the rest of Africa. An amazingly brilliant guy. I've worked very closely with him in the past. He is known for not mincing his words, so you're in for a very interesting ride during his session. And Dan Shepard one of those prudent strategy heads who always come up with something in the room that you look at and say, didn't think of that. So you'd love his point of view and generative AI. He's going to make a lot of references to Willy Wonka. So hide your inner children and chocolates away. And then, of course, what we're going to do afterwards is gather all these people in a panel where we have the magnificent Ali Rez. Everybody knows him. He's probably the most awarded creative director in the world. Very, very fortunate to have him on the panel. And then Rifa, you met in the morning in a panel as well. And of course, Uzair, who, in my opinion, is running one of the most valuable tech agency ecosystem companies in Pakistan. So over the next 12 minutes or so, I'm just going to basically set up the session, introduce you to what I think the generative AI potential really holds and what the reality is currently. I just want to start with something really interesting. AI is a very large term. I mean, it refers to anything that has the potential of being as intelligent as human beings. So it's a term that's not only widely used, but also sometimes misused in a lot of contexts as well. And because it's a very wide term, it's important to understand the difference between generative AI and artificial intelligence and concepts such as machine learning, for example. So just in a very simple manner, AI, a broad term, machine learning is essentially a subset of artificial intelligence, which is all about machines using a lot of data to learn behavioral patterns, decision-making patterns, and becoming more and more intelligent in the process. And generative AI is nothing but an interface that uses that machine learning to generate new content. And that content can take lots of forms and shapes, but that's essentially what generative AI does. What really is generative AI's potential if you just boil it down to three big factors? McKinsey estimate that generative AI would contribute close to $4.4 trillion to the global GDP by 2030. Now, just put it in a perspective. The current GDP of the United Kingdom is $4.2 trillion, and Germany, I think, is about 4.2. So by 2030, just because of generative AI, we would be adding an economy of the UK across the world. I think the real question nations and markets should be asking, what if that share is going to come to them? Are they going to use that potential to create value for themselves or not? And it is no wonder that a lot of investments are going into generative AI as a result. Just in 2023, we expect the venture cap investments into generative AI startups to go up by 600%. And these investments do not include some of the biggest investments that are already being made by companies like Baidu, Google, Amazon in their own machine learning algorithms, in their own cloud infrastructure, in their own artificial intelligence capabilities. Gen AI is also expected to free up roughly 60 to 70% of the human time needed to perform a task. And to me, it raises two really interesting questions. And the answer to those two questions completely depends on how we look at Gen AI and what our attitude towards this technological transformation is. What would you do with that time? When 60% of your time is freed up, how are you going to make yourself more useful with that time? And the second question is, what are we going to do with that unemployment potentially that's going to be generated out of the use of the technology? There are a lot of jobs, menial jobs, that will completely be automated once the real potential of these technologies is seen. And like I said, I think the way you answer these two questions would determine how you're going to ride the next wave of this technological transformation. And you better take a positive look at it, because anything with a perspective of losing something is never good. Like Musharraf also said, you've got to have a mission in mind. It's a very dense slide. I will not ask you to go through it. You can glance through it. But to me, this slide essentially makes 2 points. First, artificial intelligence is nothing new. I mean, the first PhD in AI was awarded by University of Edinburgh in 1971. The first driverless car was under production in Carnegie Mellon in 1989. And I'm sure all of you who were not born as a millennial will remember when IBM's Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov at chess. These were really early days of machine really becoming intelligent and making human-like decisions. The second point I want to make about the whole progress of AI over the years is that majority of transformative milestones on AI have happened over the past 10 to 15 years. And there's a reason for that. The essential cloud and computing capability that was needed to really transform the work of artificial intelligence didn't really exist till that point in time. And once that capability started kicking in, it completely started to invent new use cases of artificial intelligence. To give an example, when Microsoft invested in OpenAI, 90% of their investment was in cloud credits. They did not invest a lot of cash into that OpenAI, only because the biggest need for OpenAI at that point in time was computing capability and the cloud storage needed to get artificial intelligence to the next step. This is a really interesting chart. It sort of tells you where we are. So according to Gartner, we're in a phase called peak of inflated expectations. It means two things, essentially. First, our own expectations of AI are very high. So, with all the hype that's been built around, AI can change the world, et cetera, I think we expect a lot more than AI can deliver today. And the second is, obviously, AI itself in its journey, not completely there yet. So, but if you look at along the timeline of this chart, you would see that we're only about 5 to 7 years away from reaching what Gartner calls the plateau of productivity. Generally, a lot of the technologies take anywhere between 10 to 15 years to get to the plateau of productivity from the phase that Gen AI is in right now. But we expect that Gen AI would be progressing with quite a lot of speed. And the reason, again, is the availability of computing speed, quantum computing, and cloud infrastructure being available everywhere. And to me, that potential of generative AI is really where the real excitement is. So today, you can use text prompts to generate text response like ChatGPT does. You can use text to generate images. You can use text to generate videos. You can even use text to generate music or code. There are some Gen AI startups who are also doing 3D printing as a result of text prompts. But where is it going to go next? And to me, actually, this is something Mustafa Suleyman, who was the co-founder for DeepMind, a company Google acquired a few years ago, he said that a couple of days ago, and he said, what we're seeing in Gen AI is just a starting point of what he calls interactive artificial intelligence. So in essence, what Gen AI has done, it's not just a form of artificial intelligence that generates content, but it's actually transformed how human beings communicate with intelligent machines. So consider it the Netscape of the internet age, where the browsers were just coming into fashion and then became the real de facto door to the wonderful world of the internet. Why are we talking about Gen AI in a marketing conference where you might say that we're not, we're data intensive, but we're not highly sophisticated, not reliant on algorithms and stuff? And that's really interesting because, again, according to McKinsey, marketing and sales are two of the top functions across organizations that are going to be transformed with the use of Gen AI, and with the least amount of investment effort involved. It's a dense chart again, but it really tells you where various functions of your organization will stack up if you were to start deploying generative AI use cases. And what are some of those use cases? I mean, they lay across the whole function of marketing. You obviously have a lot of hype around generative AI creating content. Alex is going to talk about a lot on the subject of AI and creativity. I'm not going to steal his thunder, but there are definitely technologies available today that you can start to use, if not to generate entire pieces of content, but to at least help you develop content in a lot of ways. And then you have customer service. I mean, all of us who deal with banks and insurance companies have come across chatbots. It's so difficult, in fact, to get through to a human these days on a customer service line that all of that discipline is becoming not only intelligent, but a lot more automated in the process as well. Analytics, predictive analytics, that too, I think has got an amazing AI use case. I hope Zair will give us some insights on how he's working on some of the use cases for predictive analytics in Pakistan, for example. And then you have simple things like campaign optimizations, the tools, Albert, AdZuma, Data IQ. These are all what used to be called programmatic platforms are now capable of optimizing your campaigns with your parameters and with your set objectives without you having to do much. So the need for human media planners is gradually going away, if I can say that. And we have Dan on the panel. I'm sure he would have a lot to say on the subject. And then pricing and promo opportunities. That's a really interesting area, in my opinion. When you're dealing with large sets of data, large sets of market data, large sets of competitive data, et cetera, making pricing decision often is very, very difficult. And Musharraf alluded to a couple of mistakes that happened during her early career in how pricing decisions were made. But there are platforms like Amazon.com who've already rolled out algorithms where they can make those dynamic pricing decisions for you without you having to intervene even for a single second. So what they do is they look at the market dynamics, they look at the competitive pricing, they look at the promo offers from competition and adjust your pricing automatically to make sure your sales volume stays intact. And these to me are, the whole gamut, which is not entirely fully defined yet, but at least has some immediate applications on how we can start to look forward to looking at generative AI use cases. There's a very important subject which we all need to keep in mind, and that is of how you're going to govern the spread of generative AI, how you're going to make sure it works for you and not the other way around. And there are a lot of ethical and policy level interesting subjects when it comes to Gen AI that we need to address. So simple things like, racial bias in generative AI. And this really came to, the forefront when one of Google's facial recognition or picture recognition algorithms started calling African females gorillas in how they started tagging images. And to be honest, and Alex is sitting here, Google still hasn't recovered from that disaster of a PR publicity that it became, a bad publicity for their generative AI models, that they still continue to apologize and trying to make sure that the AI models do not have that bias anymore. Misinformation. We're looking at an age where pretty much every content you need to generate can come out of a machine, including cloning of the voices and lookalikes in how video is generated, for example. We're in for an onslaught. You would see election riggings, you would see all sorts of misinformation, propaganda being spread. And how are we going to regulate that? How are we going to stop that spread of misinformation is a huge challenge for regulators and governments across the world. There are lots of non-profit work going around on that subject as well. Intellectual property is a huge subject. Can you actually use what you generate out of Gen AI into your media campaigns, into your advertising campaigns, et cetera? All of you would have heard of the Writers Guild strike that's happening in Hollywood. And I mean, they're complaining about their jobs going to AI primarily. And why not? When an AI can write a better character definition than a writer can, and far too quickly, why would you not use Gen AI for a particular topic? Sentience. Scary thought. Will artificial intelligence be ever emotionally intelligent and take over how humans behave and completely from a cognitive perspective start to make decisions with that level of savviness? I don't think so. I think we're decades away from that, primarily because we see a lot of that scare come through in quite a lot of Gen AI discussions. But there are early signs where some of the AI chatbots, particularly Lambda at Google, showed signs of feelings, of having feelings and stuff. It's a very interesting subject. Google it. You would hear about it, or you'd read about it. It's a very interesting story. I don't know if you've heard of this story. It's a very interesting one, and this is one of my last stories in this deck. So the person you see on the screen is this gentleman called, sorry, I've forgotten his name, Lee Sedol. Lee was the AlphaGo champion till 2016, unbeaten for a certain number of years, till, sorry, Go champion, not AlphaGo champion, till Google's Go playing artificial intelligence, AlphaGo, decided to have a match with him in 2016. It was a best-of-5 game, and he had lost the first two. He was sitting in the third game, and AlphaGo made a move called Move 37. And Lee looked at that move, and he just immediately knew he doesn't have that game anymore. He resigned the game, the third game, and he couldn't stop saying, oh, it's beautiful. What just happened is absolutely beautiful. I've never seen a move like that in my life. And obviously, being a champion, he played the game of Go a number of times. But then the game went on, and in game 4, although AlphaGo had already won the best-of-5 game, in game 4, Lee beat AlphaGo. And the way he beat AlphaGo was he made a move called Move 78, which has a 1 in 10 million chance of being played, which basically meant that AlphaGo didn't have enough of a precedence to be trained on that move, and hence wasn't very good at countering that move. So he made that move, and AlphaGo was the one that resigned immediately after that move. And to this date, if you speak to any thinker on artificial intelligence, they call that move God's touch. So, if we're worried about, machines taking over and stuff, always remember there will always be a move 78 to a move 37. Just again, a reminder of the star-studded cast we have coming up. It's going to be a very, very exciting session. And before I hand over to Alex, I hope you have been mic'd and ready. I'm just going to play a quick 30-second video, and then Alex is going to take over the stage from you. Thank you so much for being a very attentive audience.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?